Baptist Church family. Pastor Andy Boggs here once again with another Wednesday night devotion. Now last week we were looking at Ezra and we saw the children of Israel rebuilding the temple and restoring Jerusalem. We were introduced to Ezra and we looked at the application of how we are to be a people that are prepared to do what God is calling us to do. Now if you was to continue to read on through Ezra and you come to the book of Nehemiah, you'll be introduced to Nehemiah. And the one thing that you cannot escape from seeing as you read throughout the entire book of Nehemiah is that Nehemiah is a man of prayer. And I want to point out some specific things throughout the entire chapter that we can apply to our lives and our prayer lives specifically. Number one, whenever Nehemiah first heard the bad news that things weren't going very well with the restoration efforts because of the sin of the people, his heart was broken in chapter 1. But the first thing that he does is he prays. Now, if you was to read through there and look at that prayer, he's praying for cleansing for himself and for the people, but for a purpose. The purpose that he would be able to be used by God. So the first thing I would say for our application is that when you hear bad news, when you hear the bad news, pray for God to use you. Now what that's going to mean is you're going to be praying for God to cleanse you for His use, for His glory, right? And to dedicate yourself to His service, amen? So when you hear the bad news, pray for God to use you. Now, God did just that for Nehemiah. If you look in chapter 2, gave him opportunity before the king as his cupbearer to speak his heart. Now, the thing about speaking your heart before a king, if you're a servant, is you run the risk of getting yourself in some trouble before the king. But the king saw that he was downcast and sad, and he inquired about it. He asked him. He said, "What's going on, Nehemiah?" And Nehemiah told him what was going on. Told him that he wanted to get back to his homeland and he wanted to take part in the restoration efforts and that he wanted to be used to do that. But before he said any of that, it tells us there in chapter 2 that Nehemiah prayed. Now, it doesn't tell us what the prayer was or what the prayer said, but it just simply says, and Nehemiah prayed. Now, I for our application, I would submit to you that when you see opportunity to serve, pray for God to help you. I'm sure his prayer was probably like, "God, don't let him kill me when I speak my mind, when I share my heart with him." Or, "God, give me wisdom, give me clarity of speech so that I can speak clearly to him and share my heart with him, and so that he would be compassionate and help me." So my application for you is this. When you see opportunity to serve, pray for God to help you. You have to continue to read through the entire chapter. You'll see instances where he is in Jerusalem and he is leading the effort to rebuild the walls, and they're facing all sorts of opposition from surrounding territories and leadership. Now, when you see the enemy stirring, as Nehemiah did, he prayed. But when you see the enemy stirring, pray for God to protect you. This is exactly what he did. And the wall building efforts continued. Amen. When the enemy conspires confusion against you and puts up attack and gets right up in your face, beloved, pray for God to capture your focus. A lot of times we get so distracted by the opposition that we face that we forget about what God is calling us to do. Beloved, let God steal your focus. All right. Next thing you would see as you go through the chapter is that whenever he would receive pushback from making authoritative decisions and following through with these decisions, man, he prayed for God's provision because the outcome could have been bad on his part. People didn't agree with what he was leading them to do, and he faced some opposition from even his own people. Man, you got to rely on the Lord. You got to rely on the Lord to see you through that. So when you receive pushback, due to decisions and follow through that you're making in your life as you rely on the Lord. Hey, pray for the provision of God, a continual reliance on the Lord. Another thing you'll see is when exhaustion enters the servant. Hey, it says that the exhaustion entered the bones of his hands. He prayed for God to strengthen his hands. We need to pray when exhaustion enters ourselves, when we start experiencing some degree of burnout or anything like that as we serve the Lord. Listen, we need to pray for God to strengthen us, and He will, as you see in Nehemiah. And then also, lastly, when you know that God is stirring, when you know God is up to something, hey, that's a cause to pray. A prayer of praise, a prayer of exaltation unto the Lord. A prayer of continuing to seek His leading and His power to provide. You'll see that in the book of Nehemiah as well. So when you know the Lord is stirring, you know He's up to something, beloved, pray. Pray and ask God to give you clarity of mind and clarity of spirit so that you would be willing to do what you hear Him, see Him calling you to do, beloved. When you know that God is stirring, pray for forgiveness and seek submission, beloved. I love each and every one of you. We're still praying for you. We're still planning on having a drive-up service this Sunday, weather permitting. I will put out a notice on social media, and we'll start our chain. If anything changes, our phone chain, you call everybody and let them know if anything changes. But as of right now, we are still planning on having a drive-up service. You come park out front of the church, and we'll be up on the steps. And you just come and stay in your car and tune in and listen to us. And we'll have a good time this Easter Sunday. And we love each and every one of you, praying for you. Be praying for our folks. Be praying for each other. And but know that God is in control in the midst of all of this. Talk to you soon. Goodbye.